Now, more about automatic storage management, or ASM. When I say that ASM is a file system, what do I mean by that? Normally, when you have a disk, who cares about the operating system, whether it's Windows or Linux, it doesn't matter. You need to initialize that disk on the computer in order to make the disk visible to the operating system, and then you will go through the process of partitioning the disk, creating a volume, and the volume in turn gets formatted with a particular file system and is then accessible to the user and the applications, right? With automatic storage management, you don't feed it formatted volumes. You feed it what are called raw disks. So you need to initialize the disk and you need to partition it out, but you do not create a format on it because ASM, when it takes those disks and absorbs them, so to speak, it will add or use its own file system on those disks. So when you devote disks into an ASM disk group, those disks will be available henceforth only through ASM and will be visible only with ASM management tools. Okay, I'm throwing a lot at you, so let's just step through this slide. When you set up an ASM instance, part of what you need to do is create one or more disk groups. A disk group is your logical storage element. It's a logical collection of disks. It could be 2 disks, it could be 10 disks, whatever you have in your array that you want to devote to ASM. Oracle will manage the disk group as a unit, and you as an administrator have relatively limited control over what's going on. So the idea is ASM is a set and forget it technology. As a matter of fact, Oracle will use Oracle Managed Files, or OMF, with ASM. So when you create schema objects and table spaces, you don't specify a full path, you don't specify a file name, you just specify the disk group, and the disk group is addressed with a plus sign. Behind the scenes, Oracle takes care of naming, it takes care of storage, and it even takes care of load balancing and speed. Because as it happens with ASM, data is striped across the disks in the array. This has load balancing and I/O latency reduction as its advantages. And when you create the disk group, you can specify a redundancy option. You can do what's called normal redundancy, which is 2-way mirroring, high redundancy, which is 3-way mirroring, or you can specify external redundancy if you're using a third-party RAID system, a hardware RAID array, and you want to offload the RAID. Let's face it, hardware is going to give you better performance than software. ASM is a software technology. So if all that sounds good, you're probably wondering, well, what's required? Well, there's the overhead of creating the ASM instance on each box, and then administration is a little bit wonky because remember, ASM is a proprietary file system, so you're not going to be able to modify the disk groups using Windows Explorer or the Nautilus shell in Linux. Instead, you'll use SQL+. You can get at your disk groups through there, of course. ASM CMD, which is the primary way that administrators interact with their ASM disk groups, that's a command line interface, as I'm sure CMD tells you. And actually, come to think of it, Oracle does give us a basic GUI. That's the ASM CA, the Configuration Assist. And I'll show you all that in the demo in just a few minutes.